What's up, YouTube? So today we have a bit of a different style video than usual. So instead of a full gameplay video being uploaded today, we will be taking a look at a guide that I've been working on recently. So I've gotten a lot of questions over the past couple weeks, right? People wanting to learn HECARIM mid, people wanting to know all about it. Why is it good? What matchups is it good into? How do you build? How do you run your pregame setup, right? Runes, items, all these different kind of things. So I decided to take a bit of time and just like detail pretty much everything. So this guide covers everything head to toe, whether it be your runes, your summoner spells, the items you're supposed to build, the matchups, how to win the matchups, team fighting, lane phase, everything. So we're gonna go really in depth as to everything that I've covered over here. So as you can see, this is our tank build. So everything here I pretty much just put it just so you could have a spreadsheet, right, showing you what to build, and then I go further in depth in the itemization. So we have tank build, and then we have full AD build, right? So Hecarim, when you play him, you always want to start Q and then take W second, put a point in E, max Q E W. So that's pretty standard for every game, and the reason why is we'll get more into that after. Okay, so runes. For me personally, there are two different rune setups you can go, right? You can either do Phase Rush or you can do Conqueror. I personally like the Conqueror setup a lot more because I feel that Conqueror allows you to take these really, really risky fights and win them, whereas Phase Rush is more for kind of going in and getting out, right? So you're going in for short trades in lane, or you're going into a team fight, you're popping everything, and then you're just like running out, waiting off cooldowns, things like that. But I really enjoy the playstyle that Conquer brings, which is just like jumping in to the middle of everybody and just being this absolute war machine, taking over the rift and just killing everybody. So first up we have Conquer, right? So this is pretty standard. The reason you take it is because it gives you a damage amplification as well as a healing aspect once it's fully stacked. So this just allows you to win 1v2s, 1v3s, and when it comes to the actual like team fighting, it allows you to win them really, really hard as well, right? Because you're getting amplified everything, and then since you're damaging everyone, and you're doing more damage because of Conquer, you're also healing more because of the way your W works, right? So just like that, right? Uh, the reason you take Triumph, so I know a lot of people take Presence of Mind, and the reason I personally run Triumph is because I feel you don't have mana problems once you get like a Glacial Shroud or something, right? The only time you really want Presence of Mind is if you're gonna kill your laner like 20 times in lane and you're never really gonna have any issues, and you also know that it's never gonna be an issue in like the mid to late game, right? Like you already be strong enough by then. But I like running Triumph because I always like taking really risky fights in lane, right? Trying to 1v2 the enemy mid and jungler, or going for these dive bots or these dive spot where I have the like 100 HP and then they somehow work out because Champ gives you like 200 at like the perfect time and things like that, right? So I like Champ more because it fits my playstyle, but you could definitely run Presence of Mind if you're more of like a relaxed kind of smarter player, if that makes sense, rather than just like going in and trying to kill everything. So next up we have Legend Tenacity. And the reason you want to run Tenacity rather than Attack Speed and Lifesteal is because Hecarim has very low cooldowns, right? His Q, if you have two Q stacks, is like 1 to 2 seconds, and you're using that a lot in fights. So if you're CC'd for 3-4 seconds, then what that means is you're not getting off like hundreds of damage that you would be otherwise. So you really need tenacity so you can maximize the amount of damage you're doing. And also, Alacrity and Lifesteal aren't really that great because both of these runes only really work with auto attacks. And Hecarim is more, his damage output is more from Rampage, his Q, than his auto attacks. So you don't, it's not needed. As for the last one, we have Last Stand. You can go Alacrity, or not Alacrity, but Coup de Grace. But I personally like Last Stand because of how low I get, and then when Triumph comes in, right, you're just maximizing the amount of damage you're doing with the 11%. So secondary, I always run Nimbus Cloak and Celerity because when you go for the all-ins at like level 3, 4, 5, whatever it is in lane, you just get so much movement speed that even if the enemy tries flashing away from you, they can't. Like you just run them straight down, and it's very, very easy. Uh, so then for the 3 adaptive, it's pretty standard. You go double damage and then take a defensive rune depending on your lane opponent, right? So if you're laning Galio, you'll want MR, but if you're laning Talon, you want armor. So we also have the phase rush set up here. If anyone's really interested in it, you guys, I'll link my guide in the description below, and you guys can have a look at it to see if maybe it fits your playstyle a bit more. So now as for summoner spells, I always go Ignite and Ghost. The reason I always take these two is because Ignite uh, is only a 3-minute cooldown, right? And because it's such a low cooldown, if you have it up and then you use it, right? With the Nimbus Cloak movement speed you're getting, it's almost like you're getting a mini ghost, and you don't really kind of need ghosts if you're really far ahead and you only ignite them to kill them, right? It also helps you too because the way Spirit of Dread works, your W, is it heals you for 30% of the damage you do, right? So when you're igniting, you're healing for 30% of that damage. So it's just more healing for Hecarim. It's an offensive but also kind of defensive summoner spell. So then we have Ghost. So this is pretty self-explanatory, right? Hecarim's passive gives him bonus attack damage depending on his move speed. So you're gonna want to take Ghost because you're just gonna get so much more damage, and it just makes you so insane, right? Like you run around everyone, you're spamming Q, you're killing everyone, and it just feels so nice. So now as for abilities, um, you always want to start Q, then take W, E, max Q, then max E, then max W. And the reason you do this is because, so I know some people ask me why I don't go E second, right? Which is the move speed ramp up into the empowered auto. And the reason why is, let's say you're laning a Z, right? And then you hit level 2 and he decides to all in you, right? He W Qs in and then he ignites you and he's all in you. If you have your W up and you commit your double sums will give you an extra like 20-30 AD at like level 2, right? Because of the way they increase your movement speed with Nimbus Cloak and the way your passive increases the amount of move speed you get. So you're just healing for so much because you're doing so much damage that no one can win versus you level 2. No one. There's not a champion in the game, not Darius, not Akali, not Lee Sin, no one that can beat a level 2 Hecarim with double sums and W. Because he just heals for so much and he does so much damage that there's nothing they can do, right? So that's why I go W second, just in case the enemy all-ins, or if I decide to all-in, then you have that healing. Or like, let's say you get ganked by the jungler, right? Let's say they decide to cheese gank. Well, now you have that healing, and maybe you can outplay it and get the double kill. So now we're going to be looking at his... oh, and the reason you want to max E second instead of W is because the only thing maxing W does is it allows you to heal a little more from minions, right? So it's not that great because maxing E second allows you to get more all-ins since it's lower cooldown, right? So you can just E in on the enemy and then just constantly do that, right? And just kill them all the time off cooldown. So it's just better because it allows you to fight more. So now as for Hecarim's abilities, so Hecarim's passive converts his bonus movement speed into bonus attack damage. So the more movement speed you have, the more damage you do. His Q is a AoE damage, right? It's the I just like the cleave. And the interesting thing about Hecarim's Q is that it has a stacking mechanic. So every time you Q, there's a buff you gain for 8 seconds. That means the next Q you have is 1 second reduced cooldown and 5% damage increase. So if you have the 2 Q stacks, your 2-second reduced Q cooldown as well as a 10% damage increase, which means you can take better fights, right? You can win closer fights and stuff like that. So Hecarim's W is he deals magic damage to everyone around him, right, in that area, and he heals for 30% of all the damage done to the enemies within its area. But so let's say you have a Veigar on your team, and he ults a Lee Sin, and it does 1,000 damage. Hecarim's healing for 300 off that Veigar ult, right? But it doesn't heal you for turret damage, which is something I learned a little while back. And also the healing you do to, or the healing you gain from minions is capped. So you can't just heal an infinite amount from lane minions. It's capped at like 90 level 1. So now your E is Hecarim uses his ability, right, Devastating Charge, and he gains movement speed, and then his next attack has increased attack range, knocks the enemy back, and Hecarim follows them, and then it also does increase damage. So Hecarim's E can also be used as an auto attack reset. So let's say a fight's really close, and then you auto and then instantly E, then you can win very close fights. But that's a very occasional mechanic that you need to use. Sun Hecarim's ult is that he dashes unstoppably. So for the duration of his ult, he can't be CC'd, and then he deals damage all the way along. But where he lands in the immediate circle, everyone's feared for X amount of seconds, right? Between zero point 0.5 to 2 seconds, depending on how far he traveled. So now, as for itemization, you always want to start Corrupting Potion on HECARIM simply because a Corrupting Potion start allows you to gain the mana and to gain the health that you need for early laning. Because HECARIM's always resetting early, so it's just really, really good for him. Uh, so here we explain Trinity Force, and the reason you always go Trinity Force is because Hecarim's Q is very low cooldown, and the Trinity Force Sheen proc is only a 2-second cooldown, so you can pretty much be getting Trinity Force auto attack procs every single time it's up, right? Because it's very low cooldown. Some detail here about the build rush, so you always want to itemize Phage into Sheen into Singer. And then on every reset you have early game, you want to maximize the amount of gold you spend, right? So if you back with 1,000 gold, even though you want to prioritize Phage, and you'd say, okay, well, I'm going to get Ruby Crystal Longsword, right? Well, it would be better to get Longsword, Tier 1 boots, and then Sapphire Crystal, because you're maximizing the amount of gold you spend, right? So here we have Core Full AD build. So the only time you really want to run this build is when you have a big lead in the earlier stage of the game, and you feel like your team is doing well, and you just want to like go in and 1v9 just kill everyone, right? Um, so this is only really good if your team's really, really far ahead. If your team is losing pretty badly, then you're gonna want to go for like the standard tank build. But this is more like you're gonna win and you just want to make it even harder, right? So you go for Train Force into Tiamat with Death's Dance and Sterak's. So that's just like the core, and then you can get other items after, right? Like let's say you want to get a Yumu's or a Randuin's, you can always do that. So then we have here the core tank build. So this is if you're behind in lane, or if you are ahead, but your team is very behind, right? So over here, what you want to do is you always want to go Triforce into Spirit Visage, Frozen Heart. And what I personally like doing is after I finish Triforce, I get Kindle Gem and Glacial Shroud. That way you're capping your CDR, right? You're getting your 40% CDR, and you don't need to worry about any more cooldown. So then you can either go Spirit Visage or Frozen Heart, depending on if you need either armor or magic resist. So then here we have situational items. You guys can read through this later if you want, but these are the other items that you could finish off if you really want to. And then boots, right? You either go Ninja Tabby or Merc Treads. It just depends on the game. Most of the time I build Ninja Tabby because the way I see it, if the enemy doesn't have a lot of CC, then the magic resist um, from Merc Treads is only like 25, right? So it's a null magic mantle, so you can just buy that on your own. But what Ninja Tabby gives with the basic attack reduction, right? Because it reduces 11 or 10 or 11% of damage, is it makes it just so much better of a defensive item than boots that I always go Tabby. So here for laning phase, right? Um, you have two options early. You can either shove or you can be shoved in. So shoving is versus champions who can't really match you and who you can fight early, right? So Zed, Talon, Salas. These are three kind of champions who, if you go up and they walk up for farm, you can just Q them or you can Q auto attack them and just take out a portion of their health, right? And just get good damage in and then force them off farm. But being shoved in is more so versus champions like let's say Lucian, Cassiopeia, or Heimer, right? These champs who they'll just bully you out of lane phase early on and there's nothing you can do. So what you either want to do is you either want to, in this scenario, you either farm max range with your Rampage, your Q, or you just concede all the farm and you leech XP, and then you wait till level 3, and at level 3 you crack them. So, yep. So over here, one of the very important things about laning as HECARIM that you guys will see a lot in my games is I always recall, right? I always recall when I'm playing lane. And the reason I do that is because HECARIM uses a lot of mana, and you're just always running out, right? So you need a constant reset. But it's also because in the earlier stages of the game, Trinity Force components are very um they're like very cheap and inexpensive. So if you take let's say 3 waves and now you have 400 gold, well, you can buy Ruby Crystal or you can get a Sapphire Crystal or you can get a Longsword, right? And just make yourself even stronger. So that's why I always get in quick resets. So now when it comes to, so people ask me, right? They say, Doaenel, what is the difference between a good HECARIM and a bad HECARIM, right? And I say it's two things, only two things. One of them is that it has to do with mana management, but it's more so how you use your Q, right? So if you're just spamming Q off cooldown, and then you're running out of mana before the second wave even comes, Well, obviously you're gonna die and you're gonna lose lane, right? But if you're using your Q smart and you're just prepping the stacks for if you feel the enemy's gonna all in you or for an all in that you want to do, and you're kind of conserving the mana, then it's a lot better, right? Like you're a much better player than someone who doesn't know what they're doing and they're just spamming mindlessly. Another thing is W usage. So, let's say the enemy Riven, right? She Qs in, and then she goes for an auto attack. You don't want to use your W in that scenario, because what if she just decides to Q out, run away, and then now your W's on cooldown for 20 seconds, and she all-ins you and you die. So you always want to wait until the enemy is fully committed, and you know for a fact that this fight is going to be die or kill. Like kill or be killed, right? So that's the scenario where you'd want to use your W. So if you win lane, right, as HECARIM mid, then what you want to do is you want to just constantly look for roam spot, right? You guys will see this in a lot of my games. If I win lane, I'll just be constantly roaming bot. I'll be ulting bot, I'll be going for my use on bot, and I'll just always try to hammer that lane as much as I can. Because if you get your bot ahead, 60% of your map is guaranteed to be ahead. So you're already at an advantage, right? Rather than, let's say, you camp top and it's only 40%. So if you lose lane, however, I never play from behind, if that makes sense. I never try and, oh, I'll just sit in lane farm. I always try to come back into the game. So let's say you reset and you see that the enemy's back in lane and you know you can't fight them, right? Like it's a 5-0 Salus. Well, just walk straight bot with your ult and see if you can maybe pick up a double kill with just like fearing behind them and trying. You need to always look for game saving plays. You cannot sit there and be passive. So now after lane phase, you want to just focus on splitting, right? Uh, HECARIM is really good at splitting because he has very, very good wave clear, and he can also just constantly shove out waves. And then if the enemy comes for him, he just ease away. But let's say they only send one or two, then you just fight them and you 1v2, you 1v3, and then you just win the game for your team, right? So that's typically like the way post lane phase goes, right? In the mid to late game, you just always split, and then if you see that an objective's coming up like Dragon, and your top lane, then start rotating to it, right? So it's just like you shove out waves and you rotate to where you think fights are going to be. That's all it really is. As for team fighting now, so Krim's main goal is to ult onto the highest priority enemy carry and just knock them into his team with devastating charge, right? Kind of like Elise and Insect. And so let's say you're versus a Lucian ADC and they have a Corki mid, right? The Corki mid's 5-0 and the Lucian mid's 0-8. You're not just going to want to ult onto the Lucian, right? You're going to want to go for the Corki because he's the highest priority damage and you can kill them very easily. So you just always want to dive the enemy backline every single fight. What you can do is you can also, like, let's say, come in for a flank. If it's mid, then maybe wait in the Raptor camp and then ult over the wall, right? Get this random, like, 2-second fear off and then everyone dies, right? Things like that. So it's about flanking and just diving the enemy carry. So as for now, just tips. You never want to spam Rampage in lane. You always want to stack your Rampage before looking for a fight on the enemy laner. So let's say it's level 3 and Cassiopeia has you shoved under tower and you know you can kill her and you want to fight her, right? You're not just going to sit there and all in her right away with no Rampage stacks. You're going to wait a bit, be a bit patient, Q, you have your 2 stacks, alright, boom, go and crack them. That's all it is. Never use Spirit of Jed on short trades, we already talked about this. And another interesting thing is your E can carry you over a wall, right? So let's say there's a small wall and a Jinx, right? She's auto attacking you over it. Just use your E, fly over, and then there's nothing she can do. She just dies, right? Another thing is that HECARIM's ult stalls devastating charges duration. So what happens is, let's say your E is about to expire and you ult, it'll still be up while your ult is going off. So it doesn't expire, you can still get your E off, right? So that can help you get an extra, like let's say, half a second in on your E time. So sometimes it's better to just chase an enemy and get hits off on a rampage. So let's say you're running down the enemy Cassiopeia, right? She's running away from you and you're just chasing her. Instead of just using your E right away, just trail her, right? You follow her. And then you just Q, and then you keep following, Q, and then like let's say she flashes, well, now you just get behind her and you knock her towards you and you kill her. Rather than just like getting your E off right away and then if she flashes or something else happens and it doesn't work out. As for Tiamat usage, in this video I detail Tiamat usage so you guys can check that out. It's the #1 HECARIM world, this one right here. So you want to skip to about 8 minutes and I show how to use Tiamat and how to like maximize that. So now as for matchups, in my guide, I included in depth every single mid lane matchup you will ever need to know. I didn't include like troll things like Alistar, but like let's say Camille mid or Zyra mid, right? Things that are more off meta, but that can come into effect. So we detail how to win every single matchup, the difficulty, what you do pre-6, what you do post-6, how you're supposed to play lane, and all these things. So if you guys are interested in checking out the guide, right, you want to try out Hacker Mid, see if it's right for you, I'll be leaving a link to it below in the description. And if you find it helpful, right, then you guys can upvote it, right? No pressure. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys all have a good night, and I'll see ya. Peace.